Seemed to be quite an interesting sort of end to the discussion on science and religion. I just basically wanted to clarify one point, that in this discussion of science and religion, I in no way wanted to point out that sort of religion is superior and science is sort of not necessary, science is the source of all evil. On the contrary, basically what I wanted to portray is that all these scientific developments are good. We're all reaping the benefits of all these scientific developments. It's very essential. But the main point was that science will plateau, or it will reach to a certain point, and then religion is something even more beyond. So no matter how much progress one can make from a scientific point of view, there'll still be some vacuum or some hollowness, and that will be replaced by religion. So religion fulfills that kind of vacuum or space. So that was kind of the first point I wanted to come across. The other point was, obviously they are complementary with one another. So what science discovers everything, obviously religion does not talk about it in so much more detail. They are kind of complementary to one another. So from where we left last time, I think we left it here at here. So I think today the scope of what I wanted to discuss is, let's just look at science in itself and religion in itself, and that is the scope. Last time we looked at some of the comparison. What are the pros and cons of science and religion? Now, if you look at the history, I mean, we touched on it briefly, that the Earth and the Sun. Does the Sun revolve around the Earth, or does the Earth revolve around the Sun? So there was kind of a lot of controversy in the past. And if you look at the Christian faith, a lot of people were persecuted for saying something which is against the biblical revelations. And obviously what transpired is something which is exactly opposite to what the Bible was suggesting. So I think from that point of view, what's actually admirable for science, science upholds the truth from a certain point of view. I see, I observe, and if this is what it is, then it doesn't matter who proclaims whatever they've said, but I now need to adhere to these things which I've observed. Religion can become dogmatic. People say, no, it's been said for so long and I need to just follow it. So you, in a way, then become sort of tunnel vision. No, one of the reasons why, for example, Oxford and Cambridge, they did not admit women into their colleges. And one of the reasons is that, for example, even Oxford, they did not have an MBA course until just early 2000. And one of the reasons is Oxford has existed without an MBA course for almost 2000 years. What's the point of having an MBA course now? So Oxford did not want to create an MBA course. Oxford was very good at economics, it's very good for this, but Oxford did not have an MBA course until recently when they started the side business school. But the common ground was that, no, we've existed for so long, and there's no need to innovate, no need to create new courses. So that dogmatic, that very fixated mind can become a problem, both sort of in the mundane world and in the spiritual world. Now let's look at it, science and religion. Where we started is that the quest is, who am I, where did I come from, who created the universe? So if you look at the history, the Greek philosophers, there were people who then started suggesting that water is the source of life. Now, you can't actually blame them from having such a view. In a way, if you actually observe, it is in a way quite true. The human body is 70% water. If you look at the earth, 70% of the earth is actually water, if you look at the entire earth. So, if you look at plants, animals, the main constituent is water. So, water is a basic element that's a source of life. So, there was one view that life only starts with water. If you look at what all the extra people are doing all these explorations in the other worlds, space exploration, the key factor is, can we find water in any of these distant lands, Mars or anywhere? If I find water, then that's a sure sign that there is life in the other worlds. So water has become the key element, that it is the source of life. Then people started becoming that water is becoming the only source of life, so that is the only matter which is important. Then someone else came along and said, no, water is important, but air is actually even more important, because you can actually have water, but respiration or breathing is the hallmark of life. Without air, there essentially is no life. So people were then going into all these various thoughts. Then came the other element, fire. And you'll think that, is fire a source of life? Yes. They'll say that in our human body we have digestion. Digestion is a kind of a power. If you look at if someone touches you, that the body is warm. One of the signs of life is that if I'm a dead body, the body will become very cold. So there is heat within the body. Without sunlight, life will not exist. So without heat, plants will not be able to do photosynthesis. So there was that school of thought saying that heat is the only source of life. Source of life is emanated from just heat. And finally, there was the other kind of school of thought. People say that life starts from earth. And that kind of concept is also very prevalent among the Hindu. And once when I sort of die, all my constituents will merge into the elements. So the water in my body will merge into the water of the universe. The heat within me will sort of blend in with the heat of the universe. And that same concept then extended along saying Brahma is the supreme God, and once when I die, he is the only soul, Brahma. And once, what is the purpose of life? For me to merge into Brahma. So I don't have a separate, distinct entity. I'm not a separate soul. The purpose of life is to merge into Brahma. And that was the concept. So that was through observation. That if I die, so the air will merge with the air in the universe. So it's that kind of concept of merging. So people then started saying that there is no separate entity as soul. So the creation of life started with the concept of matter. That these are the core elements, 4 elements, and that's how this is the purpose of life. That's how we all got created, and that's how people started thinking about who am I, who created me, and so that's where it started from. If you look at the periodic table, which is matter, it's been evolving. When you were at school, they probably had about 100 elements. Now the scientists have come up to about 118 elements. So the periodic table is now today, and as time goes on, they'll come up, discover new elements, and that periodic table will keep on extending. So the point is, science evolves, and as we come towards the end of the presentation, what I'm wanted to convey, or at least what I'm thoroughly convinced is, that what has been revealed by the scriptures is kind of the bigger picture. It's like the quest of life has been answered as to what's out there. And so therefore the scriptural knowledge is in a way encompassing. I'm not talking about the rituals, I'm talking about the core main principles which have been revealed in the scriptures. Now if you look at earth being the origin of life, I think it's quite interesting to read this. When the Roman, in fact this is from the Colosseum in Rome. When the Romans used the word homo, man, they probably no longer remembered that in doing so that they were describing human beings as terrestrial. The noun homo, like the adjective human is etymologically linked to humus, the earth. This valuable linguistic clue leads us to the numerous myths widespread in the Near East, in which earth is the matter from which the first human being is made. So now it's a conclusive, the Romans believed so strongly that humans were created out of earth. The potter's wheel, both Adam in Genesis and Enkidu in the Mesopotamian epic are born of earth, as is Pandora, the deceptive image. A woman made by Hermes on the order of Zeus to bring ruin to mortals. In Egypt, the god Khnum is depicted as a potter making human beings on his will. So you actually find graphics in Egypt whereby they are saying that humans are actually created out of the earth. And in Athens, by contrast, human beings are not born of earth, but from earth. So essentially we are earth. We are not born of earth, we actually are earth. So this concept of earth being a source of life was such an endemic in the Roman Empire. Now let's look at what some scientists say, talk about science. The first one is by Jain. He says everything that has been I'm coming to that. So that's I'm just pointing the scientific point across, and then I'll come across what the Jain point across. That this is how it's evolved, and even in that scientific community, things have evolved. So as I go along my presentation, we'll come up what did Aristotle think, what did sort of Plato think, and how the concept has changed. Even in the scientific community, their ideologies have changed, and then eventually where are we right now, and what does sort of Jain's view believe in? So some scientists on science, everything that has been said, every conclusion that has been tentatively put forward is quite frankly speculative and uncertain. So science right now has not come up with any conclusive, the kind of the universal law. We have tried to discuss whether present day science has anything to say on certain difficult questions, which are perhaps set for ever beyond the reach of human understanding. I think the last line is very apt. Perhaps it ought to be rather to say that science should leave off making pronouncements. Science cannot come and say, what I have now said is the ultimate truth. This is it. Science cannot give the answer, because science is going to be progressing, science is going to evolve, and there can be no scientist who can come and say that what I am saying is the gospel truth and the final truth. Someone else is going to come along and then disprove his theory, and some other mindset will be prevalent. The river of knowledge has too often turned back on itself. Look at Einstein himself. We can only know the relative truth. The absolute truth is known to the universal observer. So someone as eminent as Einstein himself says, whatever we know is not the absolute truth. It's a relative truth. And there's a very popular concept within the Jain text which says, Dravya Kshetra Kal Nebhav. In this time, in this day and age, at this present moment, this is what I know. Maybe if the time changes, if the place, location changes, the truth might be something else. The point is about the Gitanjali, which was written by Tagore. The point which I wanted to emphasize here is that quite often what you see right now, especially in the Eastern world, like in India and in many of the countries in the East, is the blind following of the Western standards. And this is, I'm not talking about science, again, a little bit of comparison here, is that attitude of following what the West has been doing. If you look at how sort of India has been developing moral concepts, the concept of dressing, so all the materialism which the West has enjoyed, the benefits, the fruits of all the luxuries, everything, its countries in the East are actually following them blindly. And where does Tagore come in? Tagore had written this beautiful book which was known as Gitanjali. For many years the book was unnoticed, and then at one point in time the British actually said that, what a beautiful piece of text, and he should actually get a Nobel laureate for this literature, he should get it. So Tagore was actually having a bath. He came out of the bath and some fellow friends came along. Said, congratulations, we're very happy for you. He says, well, what for? What's happened? He said, haven't you heard the news that you've now got the Nobel laureate? And Tagore was actually very upset. He says, really? Oh, I'm not at all happy. And people are perplexed that how can you not be happy when you've now got a Nobel laureate and then the whole world has recognized your work? He says, you know what? He says, you guys are congratulating me here right now because you've not used your brains. It's the British who have used their brains. They have now appreciated my piece of work, and you, for all these many years, either read it or just put it in the shelves here and have never appreciated this piece of work. This piece of work I've written is for the Indian people. I wanted to convey my thoughts to you people, and you are the ones who have just really not paid any heed to this. And he was actually quite sad at this fact here. So the point is that we need to use our mind and not sort of have this blind following, blind faith. Now, what do some scientists say on soul? This is really where science and religion have to sort of come together. Einstein says, I believe that intelligence is manifested throughout all nature. What a strong point. Look at what the Jain say. It's not only intelligence, it's not only the domain of humans. We have got a soul, animals have got a soul, plants have got a soul. That soul will keep on evolving. So intelligence is not the domain of just humans only. When there is a sunlight, and we have all done the experiments in science, the plant will actually bend towards where there is sunlight for photosynthesis. It's instincts, but it's a form of intelligence. So again, Einstein is saying that intelligence is manifested throughout all nature, not the domain of humans. Because if you look at the biblical, there was always that tendency of that God created sort of humans, and then humans were in charge of all the hierarchy, the animals and the plants and everything. And that's kind of, so there's no hierarchy here. Sir Eddington, something unknown is doing. We don't know what. I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as a derivative from consciousness. What a bold statement. He's actually saying that consciousness is actually more superior and matter is actually evolving out of consciousness. It's a derivative. You actually derive. You're deriving chas from milk and whatever. So chas is a derivative. It's actually made out of the milk and nothing. But again, that's where Jains would differ. We know that Jeev and matter are two separate, distinct entities. One is not a derivative of one another. But here is someone who believes that there's something more than matter. So James Jeans, there is a wide measure of agreement that stream of knowledge is heading towards a non-mechanical reality. It's nothing mechanical, not matter. Universe begins to look more like a thought than like a great machine. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. So people as scientists are developing that we are extending our knowledge of the human mind, human body. We are making huge leaps and bounds in terms of discoveries, but there's something more beyond that. Sir Thomson, the Great Design, he wrote a book which is known as The Great Design. Throughout the world of animal life, there are expressions of something akin to the mind in ourselves. There is from amoeba upwards a stream of inner and subjective life, right from the single-celled animals. It may only be a slender reel here, reel is like a small stream, but somewhere it is a strong current. Such parallels with Jainism, we believe that there is soul, but again we believe that there are so different senses, one sense beings, two sense beings, three sense beings. So if it's a one sense being, it only has got touch, it has got no other senses. So it's kind of the consciousness is very minimal, just a touch consciousness. And then you evolve into 2 sense, 3 sense, 4 and 5 sense beings. Exactly what Sir Thomson is saying, that it may be only a slender reel like a small stream, but somewhere it's like a strong current. The consciousness is very, very prevalent. All the 5 senses are subjugated. It includes feeling, imagining, purposing. And that's what he's saying, that basically it's just not just what we see ourselves, it's something to do with thoughts, feeling, imagining, purposing. And these are all the attributes of soul, consciousness. Oh, it even includes the unconscious. This again is very prevalent here, because what we know is that my makeup is not only what I am here right now, sanskars, some of the karmic pattern has been carried forward from my previous births. So that unconsciousness is there. I've got a fear of something. Where does that fear come from? It's probably come from the past births. So this sanskars, which is a very common term, is again something which is unconscious. Haldane, the truth is that not matter, not any physical thing, but mind or personality is the central fact of the universe. So now they're moving away from body or matter and saying that there's something more beyond that. And Arthur Compton, a conclusion that suggests the possibility of consciousness after death, even as the flame is distinct from the log of wood which serves it temporarily as fuel. But when it's winter and when you're burning wood, we know that when the wood has now burnt out, you now put a new fresh wood in, and again the fire. So the flame is constant, and that's exactly what he said. This body is going to go away, but the soul, the Atma, is going to last on, carry on. So again, the same kind of concept which Arthur Compton is saying, that the flame is distinct from the wood itself. Oliver Lodge. Time will assuredly come when the avenues into unknown regions will be explored by science. The universe is a more spiritual entity than we thought. The real fact is that we're in the midst of a spiritual world which dominates the material. Amazing statement that he's now putting so much more emphasis on the spiritual world. And that is actually quite true, because we are surrounded by matter, but what makes it interesting is the human and the spirit, the consciousness, the soul. And that's what it is. If it was just pure matter, there'll be no life. The real fact is, the soul of man passes between death and rebirth, reincarnation, as he passes through dreams in the night between day and day. Between one day and the next day, there's a night, and through that you have dreams, and just as you pass through one day to the other day and having dreams, just in the same manner, you're going to be passing through one life to the other life. Again, sort of a very strong correlation between reincarnation. So this points to the fact that there are a lot of scientists who believe that there is more than just pure matter. Now let's come to little bits where Jains come in. In the Acharang Sutra, which is the first agam of the Jains, the first chapter itself talks about plants. And I mean, without being biased, I think there is no other text. I mean, this is an independent scholarly study. It's not me saying that there is no other independent text from any other faiths which has portrayed that plants have got life and plants have got a soul. And what does the first chapter in the Acharang Sutra say? That just as we are humans, plants are subject to the same kind of feelings as which we have. We are subject to birth, plants are subject to birth. We are subject to growth, plants are growing. We end up with consciousness, plants have got with consciousness. We wither, you can see the plant, the rose being withering. In our old age, you can see wrinkles on my face. I'll be withering. I need nutrition, plants need nutrition. Impermanent, we are impermanent, plants are impermanent. Non-internal, subject to metabolism and subject to change. All these factors are just as applicable to us as humans are applicable to the plant world. So plants have got life, plants have got a soul, plants have got consciousness. They cannot express it, but they have got it. And without going into the details, what Jains have portrayed, that plants have got, there are two types of plants, Pratyek Vanaspatikai and Sadharan Vanaspatikai. One body, one soul, like us, or one body and many souls. So in this just one body of mine, you could be having many souls. That idea cannot be far-fetched, because for example, when a mother is giving birth, in that same body, there could be two separate souls. So one of the reasons why people, I mean, this is again a very, I don't want to get into the topics, but one of the reasons being said that why do people not eat potatoes or onions, one of the reasons could be that one body has got many souls. So let's say the eyes of the potatoes. So so those could be kind of an indication of souls. So one body, but many souls. And the whole point of Jainism is to minimize the violence. So that could be one area of thought that, that's one of the reasons why Jains would say that we are not eating underground roots. There could be other reasons for health benefits. There could be other reasons that you're destroying the entire plant when you're eating underground roots. But that's not the domain of today's topic. But again, as I said, so Pratyek Vanaspatikai, one body, one soul, and Sadharan Vanaspatikai, one body and many souls in just one body. Can you imagine vegetation? Can you imagine that suppose someone had the sanskars of non-veg, eating meat? Have you seen insect eating plants? Yes. That's just amazing to know that there is a plant, immobile, plants cannot move by themselves, but how does it derive its nutrition? By eating insects, so non-vegetarian vegetation. So here you have that, look at the instincts, the karmas or whatever you want to call it, the nature, but now you have a non-vegetarian plant. So not only you have non-vegetarians among humans, but also against plants itself. I think this slide, answers your question about when I read the Jain literature. This slide essentially gave me the utmost satisfaction. This slide to me conveys all what religion has to convey to you. The quest of what is in this universe, who am I, where am I? And in this universe, I don't mean the earth. This, if you have the sort of faith in what is being portrayed in the scriptures here, this conveys to you that in the entire universe, you can talk about all the other worlds. You can go to Mars, Saturn, where you want to go to. You can talk of you want to go to Devlok, you want to go to hell. No matter where you want to go, reality, according to the Jains, is in this 6 astikai. And I'm going to spend about 5-10 minutes. This is it's a huge domain. You can actually have a whole term or even a whole year discussing this topic here. But this, in a nutshell, is a postulation of what Jains say constitutes reality. Not reality on earth, it's one of those, the universal facts, universal truths. Now, what Jains say, what constitutes the entire universe, earth, moon, stars, Saturn, everything is 2 substances. And those 2 substances are, this one is a little bit more, they are essentially the same diagram. I found this much more easier to convince, to explain in the class. But it says, there's one is consciousness and the other thing is something which is unconscious. So those are the only 2 things which will go. So if someone says that, I actually went to a distant world and I found some aliens, fair enough. It might have a pointed triangular nose, it can have a different kind of body, but if it's alive, it will have consciousness, it will have a soul, and it will have a different kind of body, green color or whatever it is. So no matter where you go, that curiosity has now been satisfied, that this is what's in the entire universe. Consciousness and something which is unconscious. So consciousness is jivastikaya. And we'll also explain, I'll briefly explain, why does it call it astikaya? What is this thing? That the 6 fundamentals in Jainism are called as cha astikaya. Asti means existence. It's a reality, it's not a figment of imagination. Very important. If I talk about karma, if I talk about devlok, there are certain things which are reality. You have to believe in it, and it's asti, it's existence. If I told you, there was a plant growing in the air, you'll say, look, that's an imagination. How can a plant grow in the air? It needs roots. Roots have to go into the ground. You cannot actually have a plant growing in the air. That's a figment of imagination. A plant can fly. There's a hurricane. It can actually fly, but you cannot have a plant growing in the air. So if I use my logic, that means that that's not reality. That's an imagination. I dreamt that a plant was growing in the air. So that's imagination. Asti means existence, and kai means body in a way, but means extension. That's what kaya means. So what does kaya mean? Extension means length, breadth and width. Anything which has got a kaya has got this question of extension. You extend. Jiv asti kaya. My soul can extend. If I'm an ant, my soul will go into an ant. If I become an elephant, that soul will expand. into the body of an elephant. So the soul has a capacity of expanding and contracting. So in asti kaya, it exists asti and kaya. Kaya means it's got the propensity or the properties of extending. So jeev asti kaya, consciousness. The other part is the unconscious part. Now, what is unconscious? A big part of the unconscious is matter, pudgal. Pudgal means pulan and galan, fusion and fission, matter. All matter comes under the realm of Pudgalistika. So what science is discovering, everything which science is discovering, essentially all comes under this concept of matter. Chemistry, physics, biology again has got a dual, because there's consciousness and there's kind of the human body. So it's kind of the in-between area. So all the domain of science will be under the Pudgalistika. Again, matter has got the property to extend. Look at this table. It can expand. So you can have a length, breadth, and height. So it's a Pudgalistika. Dharmastikaya and Adharmastikaya. Very interesting concepts. I'll touch them on briefly. Dharma does not mean religion here. Dharmastikaya, the definition of Dharmastikaya is auxiliary cause of motion. Let's understand what does that mean. Auxiliary cause of motion means that you got water and you got fish, or you got a shark here. Does the water make the shark move? No. The shark sees a prey there, and because of the medium of water, the shark can move and it can go to its prey. So the water has become a medium for motion. If there is no water, the shark will not be able to move. So, but the water will not make the shark move. If the shark wants to be in this place, it will be in this place. The choice is the shark's. The water does not make the shark move. So Dharmastikaya is an auxiliary cause of motion. So that's because, and that's something which is unconscious. It's not matter. So if I have a Dharmastikaya is not particles of matter. It is something, an unconscious entity. And where is Dharmastikaya? In the entire universe. Entire universe. That is what Jains believe is the kind of triangular shaped universe. This Dharmastikaya is in the entire universe. In hell, heaven, in the middle world, wherever there is, and therefore there is a concept of Jains which they say it's lok and alok. So imagine if this is the universe, according to the Jains, this whole pedestal. Everything else is alok. So there is no Dharmastikaya. That means the Jains believe that all life exists in lok, and something which is alok is pure vacuum. Nothing exists there. No consciousness, no matter. Adharmastika is the exact opposite property. It's not matter. It's an unconscious entity. It does not have life. It does not have consciousness. And its property is rest. It enables something. If I want to rest, then I want you can rest. Otherwise, there'll be perpetual motion. If I started moving, and if there was just this Dharmastikaya, I'll keep on moving. I'll not be able to stop. So Dharmastikaya is that auxiliary cause of rest. It's a very scorching heat. You are thirsty and you want to take a rest. If you see a shade of a tree, you will want to take a pause. That shade of the tree is not making you to stop. It's your choice. I want to stop. I don't want to move any forward. I want to rest. So it's an auxiliary cause of rest. And again, it's an astikaya, because as we know, it is these two entities are extending the entire universe, length, breadth and height. Akas astikaya, space. Space is everywhere. What's the definition of space according to the Jains? That which accommodates itself and others. Simple definition of Akash. What is space according to the Jain definition? That which accommodates itself and others. Because otherwise you can come into what they call ad infinitum. Akash. How is Akash there? Where is space? What upholds space? Is there any other entity which actually, because it's there, space is there. So no, space accommodates itself and others. That's what Akash is. Now, Kal is a very, very interesting topic. It comes under the sixth Astikaya, but it's not an Astikaya. A lot of Jains have debated on these points. There are a lot of Acharyas, one on this side of the camp and one on the other side of the camp. Time is a reality. And what is the definition of time according to Jains? Vartan. That which is the essence of change. So that's what the definition of change is. The time causes change. Past, present and future. Now why is Kal not an Astikaya? So as you can see, everybody is written Pudgalistikaya, Dharmastikaya, Adharmastikaya, Akashistikaya. Kal, time is not an Astikaya, because time does not have extension. You cannot say time is this tall, time is this short. Time does not have that extension in space. Time does not have what Jains have called, time does not have vertical extension, time has got a horizontal extension. Past, present and future. You cannot say time is 5 centimeters tall, five this height. So all the others, you could actually have dimension, but with time you cannot have dimension. Time has got a horizontal extension, all the others have got a vertical extension. So it's a kaya, but this is vertical and it's got horizontal extension. So this, if one believes in this, this is in the entire universe. This is what essentially what Jains believe in. No creator, very important. Who created Dharmastikaya? Who created a Dharmastikaya? It's nature. There's been no creator God. There's no creator. Who created my soul? No creator. There's no. Who created matter? There's no creator. Very, very the distinct concept between Jains and in fact that's probably the single. If one just asks in a one word, which one would you say is the main difference between Jains and Hindus? Because many times we used to say that we all believe in sin. Hindus are very similar to Hindus, but Jains are very similar to Hindus. We believe in the concept of karma, we believe in the concept of reincarnation, both of us. But what's the single factor which distinguishes the two is the concept of creator. Jains do not believe in a creator entity. Acharan Sutra again, Acharya Siddhasena Divakar has enumerated 6 eternal truths dealt in the Acharan Sutra. So this is now saying, brothers and sisters, if you want to have the leap of faith or if you want to use your rational mind, these are the 6 things, please have kind of faith in it. Use your rational mind and start having faith. Soul exists. Atma Chit, it is eternal. Karta, it is the doer. Bhokta, it is a reaper. There is nirvana, there is liberation, there is emancipation out of this. And there is a path to attain emancipation. So this is from a very spiritual point of view. It's saying that this is where it is. It's now giving you some hope in life. That when people say, I'm now sick and tired of all this samsara, how can I get out of this? Now let's look at Aristotle. Aristotle was a disciple. Now there must have been many eminent scientists and people in the past, but from recorded history, we now know of someone like Aristotle. So prior to Aristotle, there were the people who used to believe in the elements, the water, the fire, the air. And now comes someone like Aristotle and saying, my creation has to do more with just these 4 elements. He was a disciple of Plato, around 400 years before the birth of Christ. And in a way, it's quite similar, or again, around the time of Lord Mahavir. Bhagwan Mahavir was about 599 BC, so 600 years before Christ. So, you know, it's sort of very contemporary of the time when Lord Mahavir was around. What I want to discuss here is that Aristotle came up with a very unique concept of matter and form, and which is quite very similar to the Jain concept of substance and modes. What Jain says that all these 6 things which I described earlier, they are substances. Jeev is a substance. Matter is a substance. Separate, distinct entities. Dharmastikaya, dharma is a substance. Substance is always eternal. There can be modes within it, changes within it. So I think I've discussed it quite a lot in the past. Like you can have gold, then out of the gold you can have a golden ring, you can have a golden necklace. So this is the different modes, but gold remains as gold. So what Aristotle's views were, matter is a substance. Substance is eternal, self-existing substance of all change. World is made up of matter and its effects. No consciousness right now. World is just made up of matter and its effects. So, for example, Aristotle is one as a substance, but many as baby, teenager. Matter is a prime cause of all effects and change. So, all the changes we are observing is just because of matter. And the task of philosophy is to acquire the knowledge of this prime substance. I need to know what is this matter. Now, the point here is what Aristotle believed was that he saw that out of a dead body, maggots were actually emerging. So some jiva, a dead body, if there's a carcass here, you'll actually see life actually erupting out of it. So he actually had a very strong belief that life just comes out of itself. So you have some kind of dead body or some kind of medium and life will just emerge out of something. And as it says here, the theory that life could literally spring from nothing, the last sentence of this idea, the theory that life could literally spring from nothing managed to persist for hundreds of years after Aristotle and was even being proposed by scientists as early as 1700s. That life can just spring out of nothing. And how was it proved wrong? It was only with the adoption of scientific methods that the classical theory, the spontaneous generation began to be tested, the spontaneous evolution of life. For example, the famous scientist Louis Pasteur, we have pasteurized milk, so it's the same person, Louis Pasteur. He showed that maggots would not appear in a meat kept in a sealed container. If life just came out of meat, there was just death there, then it should come out everywhere. But if you actually put meat in a vacuum, life will not emerge out of it. And then again with the invention of the telescope, then they found out that life just does not come out spontaneously. There has to be some kind of reason, medium behind it. So what did Aristotle had? 4 kinds of causes. He said there's a material cause. Why am I being born? Material cause is clay is a material cause of the pot. How can I make pot? Clay. But just by having a piece of clay here, a pot does not come up. Then there should be an efficient cause. An efficient cause is the potter. If I give you a lump of clay, you will not know what to do with it. But if you're a potter, you have got the skills, you will now be able to create a pot out of it. So there's an efficient cause. Then there's a formal cause. Then there has to be an idea in his mind. If you give it to a potter, he'll now have an idea. I'm going to pot. I want to make a big pot or a small pot. What kind of pot I'm going to do? So there's an idea in his mind here. So there's a formal cause. And then there's a final cause, which is the ultimate objective of what was. I had a piece of clay. You had a potter. He had an idea in his mind. He has now come up with a final output. So Aristotle had a duality. He viewed life as matter and form. That's in his mind. That's what he was convinced. And this is very similar to the Jain's of Jiva and Achieve. Let's look at the example which he gave. Matter, seed is matter, out of which comes tree, which is form. Tree then again becomes matter, interconnected, out of which you get wood. So wood now becomes form. But then wood now again becomes matter, and you get a table, form. So interdependent interchanging of matter and form, matter and form. And that's what he saw life as. This is what life is about, matter and form. Inseparable. Just as for us, Jeev and Ajeev are inseparable entities. Right now, but there's a caveat. Although Jains believe that we at liberation can separate from this matter and we can just be in our pure consciousness. So there's a distinction between Jains and Aristotle. That yes, until we reach liberation, my Atma's consciousness is Jeev and Ajeev, which is matter, the body. They are inseparable entities. Yes, you see them as just one entity. You cannot see them different. I cannot see my Jeev. I cannot see my conscious, my soul. So, what did Aristotle believe in? Formless matter. What is formless matter? Things which are too small to be seen. Atoms. Formless matter. There is no form to it. Cannot see with the naked eye. Then you have matter and form. All this interaction between matter and form. And then matterless form. God is matter, but with matterless form. Some kind of abstract entity. God is matter, but matterless form. He's a form. God is something. I don't know what it is, but it's matterless form. We now come to another great sort of scientist, Descartes. And these are all people who are slowly jumping towards the science of the consciousness. So this is how consciousness is coming up into the Western philosophy, starting from Aristotle to Descartes. He accepted the dualism of mind and body, not matter and form, but mind and body. And he said there are 3 kinds of substances: God, mind and body. The absolute substance is God, absolute, no changes. But relative substance is mind and body. And what he called as mind is the soul. In our language, we call his concept of mind was the soul, and body is matter. So here he is slowly getting into what we as Jains believe, Jeev and Ajeev. But he did not use the term, he used the term mind and body. And mind, we actually attribute the concept of soul to that, and body as matter. A very famous saying, which comes up in all kind of philosophical texts: what is the proof that there is mind, that there is soul? Cogito ergo sum. A very famous kind of saying which he said, I think, therefore I am. What is the proof? Okay, consciousness check. Well, I am thinking, therefore I am. Therefore consciousness is there. If I don't think, then basically there is no soul in my body. I'm a dead entity, and therefore there is no. So the proof of me being a soul is just simple. I think, therefore I am. There is no other proof required for him. Thus, soul is self-evident. And when you actually have two separate entities, the concept was that yes, there is this mind, which is soul, and then there is matter, which is body. There are two different entities. How do they interact with one another? If you've got two separate things, how do they interact with one another? आपके पास एक tires है, and we've got the body of a car. You need a steering wheel to make sure that the car steers the car. You need some kind of connection, medium. Otherwise, if you just had tires and if you just had a body, then you'll still not get a car. And therefore, he then thought that the seat of the mind, the soul, is a pineal gland. The pineal gland, which is in our brain, that is the seat of the soul. And he says that is the one which interacts between the mind and the matter. So that is a connecting part. Horse and its rider are different, yet they interact. And that is how he deduced. You have a person riding a horse, they are two separate entities, yet they are interacting. So what are the similarities and differences? So similarities are, he accepts dualism of matter and consciousness, just like Jain's Jeev and Ajeev. Dualism has to have a relation, and this is where the differences arise between Jain and Descartes. Descartes is a Western philosopher whose aim is intellectual quest, and that is quite true for many of the people right now. The purpose of science is intellectual quest, boundaries of mind, knowledge. How can I go beyond? What next? How can I just use my intelligence just further and further? Intellectual quest. Eastern philosophy, the aim is salvation. Sometimes I don't want to use my mind, I don't want to use my logic, I just want salvation. I just want peace of mind. The aim of Descartes' dualism is to explain creation. How are certain things created? How can I explain that? James' aim is to transcend this dualism. I want to get away out of this dualism. I just want to become my pure own soul. Descartes says that matter has a property of extension. Jain says that Ajeev, like time, etc. say that there are Ajeev like time with no extension. Oh yes, so what Jain said is that matter has extension, but Jain say that not all matter has extension. There is something which is time which does not have extension. So you cannot say matter is, that's it, that's no other substance besides matter. Because Jain said there is actually another matter which is time and which does not have extension. Descartes says pineal gland is the seat of the soul. What does Jain say? Where is the soul? Jain said that the soul is coextensive with the body. If I become an ant, my soul is going to be in every single pore of my body as an ant. If I become an elephant, my soul is going to be in the entire body as an elephant. So the soul has got the propensity to expand and contract with the body which it gets. So now we have come up with some of those philosophies, and now we look at space and time. Now Jains, as you say, have really had a lot of articles on Akas, Astikaya and Karl. So here we had Newton, who then considered time and space as absolute and independent. Very, very similar to the Jains. Space and time are two separate entities, absolute and independent. Their existence depends neither on the knower nor on the things they house or relate. Whether I'm here or not, space is going to be there, time is going to be there. Space is continuous and simple, cannot be bifurcated into parts. Origination and destruction of things do not alter its quality. An earthquake theo does not mean space has now vanished. Space is always going to be there, even if there is origination or destruction. Space cannot be destroyed. Now, one thing I didn't point out in this concept of Akastikaya, what is the property of Dharmastikaya and Adharmastikaya? What Jain say is that it's one entity which cannot be divided into parts. That's what Jain said. Let's just imagine that, say there are about 20 people in this room here. If I brought a piece of cake here, and if I wanted to divide it into 20 people, what I have to do is 20 slices. If I make it into 20 slices, so this piece of cake has now been divided into 20 slices and each one of you gets a slice. Now let's say, for example, I've got £20 note. Can I now dissect this £20 note into, and it said the £20 note is 5 centimeters by 4 centimeters. So the area is 20 square centimeters. If I now cut it into 1 square centimeters, each 1 centimeter, if I give it to each one of you, will you have £1? You will not have. So this £20 note is a single entity. You cannot, the division of 20 pounds can be a conceptual entity. Yes, 20 pounds is, if I have £1 coin, if I have 20 pounds, that will make 20-pound note. But that 20-pound note is a single entity. You cannot divide. So Dharmastika, they're not into parts. They're not like matter. Oh yes, if I have this table, if I can break it into smaller pieces. I'll have atoms. I'll have molecules. No. Dharmastika is one entity and one single entity across the entire space, Akashkaya. So it's a simple entity. It's not complex. It's a very simple entity. And there you go with Newton. Space is continuous and simple. It cannot be bifurcated into parts. Very similar to what Jains believe in Akash and even Dharmastika and Adharmastikaya. You cannot bifurcate into parts. You cannot cut it. I cannot say, I am Dharmastikaya chain, I am Dharmastikaya nothing. You cannot bifurcate it, you cannot put it into parts. So Newtonian physics tried to explain motion by relating physical ether with space. Now, a very big concept came. What Newton said is, there is sunlight. Light is coming from sunlight to us here. How is light coming through very distant bodies? So if scientists were perplexed, when there are vast spaces or voids, emptiness between us and the planets and the stars, huge emptiness, how does light actually come across? What's making the light come to us? It cannot pass through vacuum. There has to be something there. How do the rays of light travel? And then they came up with an idea of ether. There has to be some medium. Like as we said, if the fish wants to move, it needs a medium of water. So then the scientists came up with the concept of ether. But there has to be some substance, I cannot see it, because of this substance makes the light rays travel. Then they said that this ether has to have some mass, it has got some weight. But then they say, if something has got mass, if suppose there is a small particle of matter here, and if light rays come here, then wouldn't this particle of ether obstruct this particle here? Then they were a bit surprised that yes, if it's a mass, no matter how small it is, even if it's as small as an electron, but if you've got something and if light ray comes here, you've got obstruction. That means light should not be, if there are so many of such kind of particles, then light cannot actually travel through. Then the scientists then said, you know what, let's create some exception, and they said, let's say that ethereal mass will not hinder the movement of light rays. No explanation given. The concept of ether was so convincing that yes, this is what makes the light travel, but they could not explain its entirety. If it's got mass, then it has to obstruct light. But why doesn't it obstruct light? Then it says, well, you know what, forget about it. It does not fit with reason, but we'll just make a theory that ethereal mass will not obstruct the movement of light. Then this concept got so much momentum that people started thinking, oh, I've got a human body. There is actually electrical currents. If I touch something here, I get a sort of electrical impulse. What makes something impulse go from my hand to my brain? Oh, there must be ether within my body. What causes that movement to go? How come fluids move from my body, from my heart to my legs and everything? What makes movement within my body? There must be something like ether within the human body. So ether has got different parts of ether. There is ether which causes the movement of light. There must be ether within my body which is causing movement. Now, the concept of ether in one way is very similar to the Jain concept of the Dharmastikaya and Adharmastikaya. And now here I am discussing pure science with you. I'm not talking about the merits of science. And so we are looking at pure concepts of science and religion and trying to compare that this concept of ether which was in science has got a very similarity between Dharmastikaya and Adharmastikaya. It's indivisible. According to even the science, we believe that Dharmastikaya is indivisible, is achieved. It does not have consciousness. And it's not material, it's not matter. According to the scientist, ether is multiple. I've got ether responsible for the movement of light, I've got ether responsible for the movement of fluids. Ether is material. It's not Buddha. So they believe ether was actually, atoms of matter, and it has got mass. And according to Jains, it's non-material, therefore it does not have any mass. So the conclusion at least from my perspective, is physics is incomplete and changing. Whereas if I now read the Acharan Sutra and if I read the Jain scriptures, I have now got a very convincing, logical explanation of what's in the universe, and it sort of satisfies your curiosity of what's there. Now you actually had someone like Einstein who came along, and he says that, you know what, Newton was talking about 3 dimensions. Newton is only talking about space. Here is Einstein who says that life is not only 3 dimensions, there is actually 4 dimensions. There is space and time. And just rather than to go through this in a little bit more detail, let's slightly give an example of what he meant by, suppose you are in a state of happiness. Doesn't time seem to be going on for so long? Like, oh, I wish, that holiday, it seemed like, it could be a 1 week holiday, but it seems like a month. On the contrary, if you were in pain, even a sort of 10 centimeters of pain, doesn't time seem to be prolonging so much more further? So the concept of speed and time is relative to the observer. Let's say you actually had you are sitting in a plane, so you are going in this direction at 500 miles per hour, and someone is coming on a plane on the other direction at 500 miles per hour. If someone asks what is the speed, the speed is actually 1,000 miles per hour, because you moving at 500 miles per hour, the other person is moving at 500 miles per hour in the other direction. The speed at which you feel that people are moving away from each other is 1,000 miles per hour. On the other hand, if you are moving at 500 miles per hour in this plane, and someone else is sitting on this plane at 500 miles per hour, what is the speed between both of you? 0. You'll say that both of us, there's no speed. So according to Einstein, it's relative. I cannot come and make an absolute statement saying, the speed of this object is 50 miles per hour, 100 miles. It's relative to where I am, the object, the observer. So you cannot make an absolute statement that this is the speed. Speed relative to what? So Einstein rejected the Newton's concept of absoluteness of space and time and made them relative, which actually diverges from the Jain point of view. Einstein, again, as everyone knows, is a very eminent scientist, and his theory of relativity has got a lot of applications in satellite technology because it's all to do with relative movement. So some of these concepts and principles are very, very important and have got huge implications even in today's day and age. So this theory of relativity, so Einstein and Jainism, we sort of blend so well with this concept of relativity. Jain concept of anekantwad, syadwad. Again, this is a separate topic in itself. Many Jain literature texts have translated syadwad as perhaps. Because Jains perhaps say, perhaps this is a table, perhaps this is this. And there's been a lot of criticism from the Acharya saying that these Western philosophers have actually misinterpreted the syadwad. What Jains say is that there is a theory of relativity. At this stage in time, this is actually a podium. I can actually disintegrate this and actually make it into a table. So, from a particular point of view, not perhaps is an element of doubt. There is no doubt here. So, the element of doubt, Jains are not doubtful. Jains say that from a particular, at this stage in time, this is a table in this time period right now. If you then, maybe someone else is going to break this into pieces and make something else, a stool, it's going to be something different. So Jains have got this concept of relativity and anekantwad. So the relativity concept and Einstein are sort of very, very much sort of in sync. Now let's look at the concept of soul. So we've seen that many of these Western philosophers have been thinking about soul. So you started off people with, who thought about the physical elements, then you had Plato and Aristotle, who thought about the soul, there's something matter, there's something more than this. And someone like Plato said that there are 3 types of soul. Appetitive, something they just want to eat, sort of plants. Spirited or sensitive, which is animals, and humans are the rational soul. So he had 3 categories of soul. Descartes said soul is rational, thinking. According to Descartes, a thinking mind, thought is the only hallmark of soul, consciousness. And only humans have it. Animals cannot think, so animals have got no soul. That's what Descartes believed. So, quality of soul is thought, and thinking has many forms. Soul is not represented in physical acts. I eat, I drink, I sleep. So, according to Descartes, I eat, I drink, I sleep. There is no thinking involved there. So, therefore, there is no element of soul. That's not a proof of soul. I think, I doubt, I will. This is my choice. Those processes are actually constitutes the soul. So, it's the thought, only thought. That power of thought. If I observe thought, then thought is the hallmark of soul, nothing else. Again, some differences between Descartes and Jain. According to Jains, what do Jains believe in soul? if you look at this, Jains believe that soul has got infinite qualities, out of which the four more prominent ones are like bliss, anand, happiness, intuition, knowledge and energy. That sort of generally comes up as the prominent characteristics of soul. Descartes says only humans have soul. Jains have said Sat Jivan Kaya. Jains have said there are 6 forms of living beings which have got soul. The 4 elements, plants and mobile beings. Mobile beings are mobile beings are humans, mobile beings are animals, mobile beings are angels, devios because they are mobile, and hellish beings. So all this comes under mobile. So Jains believe there are 6 classifications of soul. The 4 elements, earth, water, air, fire, plants and mobile beings. So that encompasses all forms of life. Again, just trying to, I've sort of spent a lot of time showing the parallels between sort of science and Jainism. Physics knows nature through the study of matter, energy and interactions. I think I just want to conclude. In a way, they have no belief in God, or they struggle with the belief of God. Physics is based on laws, Newton's law of gravity, Kepler's laws, quantum theory, whereas religion is based on faith to a certain extent, philosophical deductions and revelations, what has been. Jain use of the term Pudgal means fusion and fusions. Mahavir's Anekantvad theory of relativity and Einstein. Jainism has a sharp distinction between the known and the knower. Atma Chu and what I know, subject and object. Atma is me and there is object of knowledge and the subject of knowledge. Soul, according to Jains, has got no shape, size, weight and can never be within the realm of physics. There can be no experiments, there can be any deductions, scientific deductions which can then say that I have now detected soul. Because soul has got no mass, has got no form, has got no color, has got no taste, has got nothing, none of the properties of matter. It's the exact opposite of matter. Whatever are the properties of matter, matter according to Jain Pudgal is a very extensive, there are whole volumes of books, but there are 4 primary attributes of matter, Pudgal: touch, taste, color and smell. Even you can have a small molecule of atom and you can say that it has got some kind of touch, taste, you cannot see it. You have to then use your common sense. That, for example, you wanted to paint your house red. It's a white piece of wall here. If you now went and got a deluxe pot of can and just took a small drop and painted on the wall, will you say it's red? No. The intensity, as soon as you do 1 coat, 2 coats, 3 coats, then you'll start seeing red color. So the intensity increases. So if it's a very minute, even if you cannot see it, like molecules and atoms, they still have touch, taste, color and smell, even it must be in a very minute intensity. That's why you cannot see them. This is kind of again a kind of a philosophical point which I wanted to portray across. The Jains have got a very strong dictum: Paraspa Paro Jivanam. All life is interdependent and independent. It's a very Tatvata Sutra. Even when they met the queen and everything, that becomes kind of a very succinct aphorism which is being portrayed to the West. So all life is independent and interdependent. I'm a soul, I'm independent, but yet I cannot exist by myself. There has to be some interaction between other entities. Same thing with science. If you look at 2 huge bodies, there is actually a formula which says G, some kind of constant, mass 1 and mass 2, and they're related by the square of the distance apart. So even if you have 2 separate entities, from a scientific point of view, there is some interaction between them. So even on a conscious point of view, there is some interaction between us as soul, as Jeev. So that dictum of Paraspa Graho Jivanam in a way sort of fits in with this kind of the scientific, that there's interaction. The whole domain of science is Pudgal, and Jains have actually got voluminous texts describing what is Pudgal about. Obviously, Jains, you wouldn't find the periodic table in Jain texts saying this is the elements, this is the atomic mass, and this is the chemical mass. The concept of matter has been described. What are the different kinds of matter? They have said that, for example, matter has got 8 types of touch: hot and cold, heavy and light, viscous and wet, and there's another pair, 4th pair. And what is very interesting that I just like to say in a nutshell is, for example, when we say, Jain said that karma is matter, particles of matter. Why can't we see matter? Very, very unique and interesting explanation which Jains have given. When you have matter, matter can have two properties. So whilst you have touch, there could be 8 types of touch. So 4 pairs. So hot and cold, heavy and light. So like that there are 4 pairs. There are some particles of matter which do not have the property of heavy and light. They do not have any property of heavy and light, which means they are particles of matter but having no mass. And so therefore karma, chatusparsi and astasparsi. So those are the technical terms which the Jain scripture says. 8 forms of touch and only 4 forms of touch. So those particles of matter which are chatusparsi, they do not have heaviness and lightness. So if there is no heaviness and lightness, then those particles of matter don't have mass. And if they don't have mass, they cannot be detected by any scientific means. So science cannot say, I've now detected karma. I can now see that there is karma. So they cannot say, and there's a logical explanation because they do not have this concept of, they don't call it mass, heaviness and lightness. So they don't have the mass. And therefore, you can actually have a karmic particle here, at the next instant, it could be at the top of, let's say, 5 billion miles away, because as we know in science, the maximum speed is the speed of light. And that's what dictates how much things can move. But if something has got no mass, nothing is stopping it from being here and being 1 million miles away at the next instant in time. It's got no mass. It can move from here to there, nothing is impeding it. Jainism have discussed what science calls as positive and negative. They've called this softness and roughness. So the terms which they've used, soft and rough, is akin to the positive charge of an electron and negative charge of an electron. So now there are people who are now spending time and saying that, you know, what has been said by science and what has been said in religion can be intertwined. So it's an interpretation what people are now making, that because in the scriptures you just hear that matter has got softness and roughness, but that's being interpreted as positivity and negativity. Quantum physics is again something which is the advancing stage of what science is going along. In a nutshell, the essence of quantum physics is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. That is the hallmark of the quantum physics. What it means, at any stage in time, I cannot know the real state of matter. It's uncertain. And the essence of that is, if you did an experiment, these are particles of light. If you created 2 holes, you will actually see that if you consider light as particles of matter, then you can say, there are 2 holes here, I can see some particles coming here and some particles of light coming there. So that proves it that light is a form of particle. Then there's someone else who says that, let's again have a source of light, and again 2 slits here, but now I'm actually seeing a different kind of pattern here. And I'm seeing patterns of darkness and lightness. And what does that mean? Light is not actually a particle, it's actually a wave. And where they interact, where this light, the wave nature of light interacts, that's where you find. So wherever they're interacting on those 2 waves are interacting here, those points are dark and everywhere else is light. And so this now proves that light is wave. So now you actually have 2 conflicting opposites, because what is the laws for this is exactly the opposite of this. Here you will have Newtonian mechanics, mass, velocity. Here you got amplitude, you got frequency. Separate physical concepts, totally different, and yet both of them are totally opposite. But yet light, at the same time, is particle, and at the same time is wave. Dual nature of light, contracting principles, coexisting at the same time. And that's the realm of quantum physics. At this instant in time, can I say that light is particle or wave? I can't say. It is particle, it is wave. And 2 opposite concepts, yet existing at the same time. This was an interesting article whereby it says, a scientific paper says this approach, there are some scientists says how many species are there on the earth? And if you read this academic paper, this approach was validated against well-known, I can't read that, something, it says it predicts that 8.7 million aquatic species globally of H2.2. So they are now saying that all forms of life is to the region of 8.7 million. And scripture say, there are 8.4 million different species of life. And there is an independent research article with references which says that how many forms of life there are. Again, as I mentioned last time, a paper on the Jain doctrine of karma and the science of genetics. A PhD thesis on someone saying that how the Jain concept of karma and genetics are again a PhD thesis. So people now are saying that how can we go along and use scientific knowledge, use scripture knowledge, and there's a lot of interaction between them. Look at this. In the past, a lot of people have been talking about Muladhara. You can go to the rishis and the gurus. They talk about when you meditate on this chakra, Swadhisthha, Manipur, Anaha, Vishud, Agna, Sahasra. And here you have people saying this exactly corresponds to the endocrine glands of the human body. The chakras which you're talking about are none other than these different endocrine glands of the human body. So science and religion are blending with one another. And when people talk about centers of consciousness, it's quite simple. Consciousness is all around, all within my body, but then it's concentrated in certain parts. So for example, if I got a gunshot wound, someone actually shot me. If I got a gunshot wound here, this is not going to be lethal. But if I got a gunshot wound around my throat or around my head, that's going to be lethal. That proves it that consciousness is actually more condensed or more in these areas here. Because if someone did these are the areas here, then or my heart, that these are the areas where if there was some damage, my consciousness would go away. I would die. So that centers of consciousness, when people say focus on this part of your so all the kind of the scripture, the gurus then talk of meditation. Here you are having people then sort of blending with another and saying that the scientific concepts and the spiritual concepts, they're blending with one another. I mean, lastly, Richard Smith, former editor of the British Medical Journal, most scientific studies are wrong, and they're wrong because scientists are interested in funding and careers rather than the truth. Because आज मैंने कितना funding मर से, I need to get some more funding. So therefore, and then sort of the point at which I would like to conclude this topic here is that, at least for myself, I've got blind faith in the scriptures because scriptures does not have any of these biases here. Bhagwan Mahavir, when he would not have said, it's for my praise or for my ego that I want to postulate certain theories. Vitragi, no attachment, no hatred. Vitragi, when they propound such truths here, they are without bias, and therefore one has the full faith in the scriptures. It's a question of, if it doesn't make logical sense, it's my inadequacy that my mind cannot grasp those concepts, but I cannot start denying those facts here, is basically the point. And finally, last one here. Holy Scriptures, come on all ye who are tired, thirsty and hungry in your journey of life. You are lovers of truth, but only ignorant of it. Come to us, we shall enlighten you on the deep problems of life. What is life? What is this world? What is soul? What is matter? We shall quench your thirst and satisfy hunger. Come to the Scriptures. If you went to the Mathematica of Newton, those principles will keep on changing, but the Scriptures will quench your thirst. Jai Jinendra.